there is quite a bit of the food system that actually is working more or less well. So there is this big crisis narrative. It's all, it's all terrible, and everything needs to be changed, and we need to go in and change stuff. And that is true to some extent. But there's quite a bit that's working in the background that is feeding people more or less affordably and delivering more or less nutritious food. And that is, I think, something that this COVID pandemic has shown to a great extent. Like, we were all freaking out where there was going to be food, and actually, farmers continue to produce food at great personal risk, I have to say, many of them.
The amount of data around food, just food alone, people taking pictures of food and putting it on Instagram, and your purchasing behaviors and what you search for, and it's incredible. And it's everywhere. I mean, it's not just high-income countries. They're tracking data all over the world.
Yeah. So this data is there, or some of these data is there. It's just not at the hands of decision makers in governments. It's at the hands of decision makers sometimes in companies. And that's maybe a good bridge to how can this monitoring framework really impact decision makers. So if you look at what's going to be happening the day after the UN Food Systems Summit, what do you see are the next steps for the monitoring framework to really spur action, Jess?
I see it in a few different ways. Well, beyond just this idea of, well, we have to publish our first kind of framing paper. Hopefully that will be published. And I think that sort of sets a course of what are the areas that are key that the world needs to focus on within food systems. Because if you talk to people working in the country level, they're like, there's all this talk now about food systems. It's incredibly complex. And so to me, the monitoring framework project provides some clarity on some of the big areas to focus on, potentially mapping the highest quality indicators where they're available to those important areas, showing where there's no measurement, although it's an important area to track. And we want over the years to bring in many more collaborators working on this. We want this to be sort of a live document, a live project where we're getting a lot of collaboration in not only setting out what are the best ways to measure food systems, but in future years, how is the framework, the monitoring being used? Is it being taken up by the Africa Union? Is it being taken up in Asian countries? And if so, how? And is it helping at all in decision making? So hopefully at some point we'll get there, maybe in several years. Alejandro, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always, with these types of exercises, I'm trying to think a little bit in, like, if I were 5 years in the future, like, what does this look like and who's using it? And I feel maybe to our advantage, the governance of the food system is not centralized. There's not like a central food system like president or anything like that. It's really, really diffuse. You have corporations, you have governments, you have a very rich civil society kind of movement around food. You have unions. You have all sorts of actors that are interested. And in my view, we can't think of this monitoring framework as having one audience. I don't think it's just governments, for example, or just the UN system. I think this is, as Jessica says, it provides some clarity to, I think, lots of people, and people who maybe we haven't even thought about, actually, about what are the aspects of food system that we should keep tracking. And I think maybe this will be of use for those non-governmental organizations that are trying to understand, to put pressure on governments. For example, if a monitoring framework is showing that, say, some health indicator or some livelihood indicator is constantly deteriorating, they can use that to then pressure their government to ask for accountability. So again, I don't think it's just that this is just for some guys in a suit who are going to be looking at this and saying, oh, now we need to do this. I think it's just creating a sort of evidence base that all sorts of actors might use in different and perhaps unexpected ways. And maybe my last thing, sorry, I've said too many positive things now. So say like a more worrying thing is, I think there is a worrying trend, particularly at the government level, of I'm not going to say ignoring evidence, but of evidence being perhaps less central. And I think that the US is sadly a really good example of this, where just the kind of nature of reality is kind of perceived or seen differently by different social groups. And so just what we can agree on what the evidence is not the same among people. And I think some governments use this fact, obviously, to create kind of confusion and to promote authoritarianism. Sorry, I don't know why I went into this expression, but just to say, we shouldn't just assume that evidence goes very neatly into like decisions, and that people make decisions rationally, or that governments make decisions based on the evidence. But there's more. It's more, the way is more complicated than that.
No, definitely not a coincidence you were going that way, because I was asking, so what's going to happen the day after the summit? There's a good track record of governments ignoring evidence. I think COP26, upcoming COP26, is a very good example, and a very sad example of countries, companies ignoring blatant evidence, and civil society and kids on the streets shouting, "You can't do this anymore." So maybe there's things to learn from that. But yeah, the topic on what is it going to be, evidence-based policy making or policy-based evidence? That's a tricky one, and I hope that this monitoring framework can really provide that uncontroversial evidence, because that's a bit what we are struggling with in the food world. Now that it's so contested, this facts and values, they start to mix. There's a good OECD report on that really puts the finger on that. So that's something I guess is going to be ongoing, and this framework can help out. Maybe Jess, can you say, give a key message on for our audiences on this?
Well, I'm a researcher, so I firmly believe in that evidence and data can drive better decisions. I do think the pathway to get to those final decisions is a long and sordid one, like Alejandro had said. But I think, without evidence and data, policymakers are kind of operating in the dark and feeling their way around. So I do think they play an important role. And I say to my students and to junior researchers that keep generating great science and evidence, because it can shape policy, and we've seen lots of examples of that. It can inform decision makers, and it can bend the arc towards something positive, even, as you said, when science is being disregarded in some cases, or overly scrutinized, as we're seeing with with the whole COVID pandemic, that doubted. A lot of times it's not about science at all. It's about ideology and worldview. And often you see that the science isn't being attacked, but the scientists are being attacked. And that's alarming and worrisome. But I think that's even more reason to keep pressing and producing great evidence and the best quality data to at least help inform decision making. And hope that, as Alejandro, it's evidence-based policy making and not the other way around or ignored. But, of course, evidence is only one piece of a larger puzzle of decision making. But I hope that this framework and all of us who are working on it is contributing a piece of that evidence to food systems transformation.
Hail to that, yes, for sure. Alejandro, some final notes to add to that? We want to close.
No, I think that's, I agree with Jess. We need to continue to do it, and I would reiterate, because I think you're feeding the uses of these areas. I think it have become more democratized. Actually, I think right now you cannot control who this evidence is empowering. It could be the rebellion extinction movement. They're using the IPCC, and they're using it as a leverage to talk to their governments. So did the IPCC think they were writing the report for like some kids in the street? No, but that is how it was used. So that's why I'm kind of, I think this warning about evidence not always making its way into decision making, that probably is less and less important because more people have that evidence available and can use it in ways that we cannot fathom.
That's a great note to close on. Accountability being democratized as one step to make the day after the UN Food System Summit a good day, a day of action and making all these great commitments reality. Thanks both of you. We'll close and maybe see you in the next episode.
Thank you, Paulina.
Thank you,
Paulina.